Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Equity and Student Achievement Committee of the Whole meeting. This is December 13th, 2022. I'm going to open the meeting and call the meeting to order officially at this time. I'm just going to move down the agenda so that we're not prolonging time. We do appreciate your patience. Starting with the speakers list, I don't reflect any speakers or comments that were submitted for this particular meeting. So I'm going to move forward and ask to entertain a motion for acceptance of the minutes from the November 8th.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, minutes accepted from the November 8th Equity and Student Achievement Committee. So we're just going to jump right into our discussion topics. This evening, we're going to hear from the teaching and learning updates. Topics will include attendance and chronic absenteeism, based on what I'm showing here in board docs. And we have some quarterly data information, freshman GPA data, and assessment data, and graduation projections. So let me just open this up here. And it looks like we'll be hearing from Shani Keelan.
I lost connection. I don't know if that's a sign that we're not going to lose connection or it's just me.
Okay. Is everyone showing connection? We're having some technical difficulties, Shani, so as you're getting situated, I'm just going to double check with everyone. Is everyone connected?
We'll see. Yeah, check. No, it's just me.
Check. Okay. So feel free to get started once you're situated. Thank you.
Good evening, Board President, Vice President, Interim Superintendent, and thank you for having me to present tonight. So to get started, I'm not sure. Okay, sorry. I was getting ready to click. The clicker's not quite ready yet. So just as always, teaching and learning updates will focus on curriculum, instruction, assessment, and professional learning. And then we do have, under the assessment piece this evening, some high school graduation projection, freshman on track data. The attendance updates are coming in the superintendent's weekly notes. And so there's a further attendance update that's coming in January at the ESA committee meeting. But those are typically coming in the Friday superintendent memo on chronic absenteeism and the attendance rates. So just as a reminder, our guiding principles that we're living and breathing by, that every child deserves to engage in grade level content every day. Our students must engage with high quality, culturally responsive experiences where they are affirmed, seen, and valued. And we have an obligation to provide an equitable experience for every student across the district that is not dependent on where they live or where they go to school. In the alignment in the office from Chief Academic Officer, myself, we have aligned this in teaching and learning under curriculum, instruction, and assessment, where the curriculum is the grade level standards, what programs we have adopted, and what we're aligning to teach grade level standards as we instruct. Instruction are the instructional strategies that engage all students and affirm all students so they are seen, heard, and valued. And the assessment is what we're measuring in our curriculum instruction so that it's meaningful. We're analyzing student work and assessments with data-wise protocols to ensure we understand what students have learned and what they still need to learn. Just some highlights in curriculum for us. We have, as I've mentioned previously in other meetings, we have some grant opportunities with Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation Teaching Lab. There's some highlights and emails that we received recently where 83% of teachers reported using the illustrative math program more than 3 times a week. That was an increase of over 10%. 95% of teachers reported that professional learning supported them in being responsive to student backgrounds, cultures. And 85% of students reported that their teacher respected their culture and their background. So those are some highlights I wanted to bring to the table. For our Amplify Science, the update is that we're moving the teaching and learning for Amplify Science, our new curriculum, into quarters 3 and 4. We're waiting for materials, and they're coming in droves as we speak, and we're trying to get them all into the warehouse and out to schools as quickly as possible, but we have communicated that and ensured that folks know that there's been a shift in that. And so they're continuing social studies in Q2 and pushing science in Q3 and 4. Next year, that will be a full implementation of Amplify Science. And then receivership schools have been using magnetic reading in K2 as a support from the iReady program for phonemic awareness and phonics, and that has been going pretty well. And we're looking to expand that out to other grades.
Janie, can you expand on the magnetic reading and what that provides for the students, just real briefly again?
Right, so it's targeted instruction in phonics in addition to what they're already receiving. And it is a piece of iReady, so it's a component that we purchased in addition to.
Okay, so the phonics and
Like letter sounds, letter blend sounds, right? So to teach children how to actually read.
yeah, I know what phonics is.
Yeah.
So the science of reading, we're using the science of reading with our educators.
Right.
The most. And then the other piece is the materials for science. I know you said that the timeline shifted a bit. Do you have like an anticipated timeline for that arrival? I may have missed that
Yeah,
one.
so the materials and supplies are coming in every day as we speak. We're intending to start that curriculum Q3 and 4. We originally intended to do it Q2.
Okay, so by
And so
3
we
and
had to push back this year to Q3 and 4 because of the timeline when we received and
Okay.
everything was approved.
So you're anticipating by Q3 we should have all the materials
Oh,
that we're waiting
yeah.
for? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, just a follow-up to that. When you say Q3 and 4, you're talking about introducing a new curriculum of science to kids in the middle of a school year?
Yes.
How
It
does
was
that work?
So it was always the plan this year to do 2 units instead of all the units because of the timeline of when we adopted the curriculum. So the teachers have been trained. There's been training happening since summer. So they're training, they're waiting for the materials. They have online resources. And so there's an implementation plan and a guideline. We've just had to switch it into Q3 and 4 versus 2 and 3 or 2 and 4. So we've had to make some shifts and adjustments. So it'll be a partial implementation this year. Next year will be full implementation.
Okay, so like a soft launch then. I'm just wondering like what the expectation would be for both students and staff to implement a curriculum like mid-year
Yeah.
and
So
what
there-
the outcomes are that you are all expecting from that.
One of the deliverables is that they're doing the unit assessment, a pre and a post assessment. So they're going to do 2 units this year, K5, and there will be a pre and post assessment for that. So that's one of, like, what's the deliverable? That's the deliverable.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So in instruction, today I'm going to report on the community learning walks that we've talked a little bit about and actually share some data. In this process, they are cross-functional teams, so many departments show up at the building, and we also work with a cross-functional team in the school, their instructional leadership team or their site-based team, school-based team. We meet together, we do the walks together, we complete the tool together. We have, when I pulled the data for the slide deck about a week ago, visited 31 schools and over 464 classrooms. So the data you're going to see is an accumulation of all of those put together. Some of the schools have been high schools, some have been 7-8 strictly, some have been K-8, some have been 6-8. K-6s. And then the Look For tool obviously has been aligned to some of the needs in the academic plan to align to special education population and bilingual population and world languages. So the first big indicator that we look for is culture of learning. These are the main topics and look-fors that we're looking for in the classroom when we go in, that students are completing instructional tasks, that they're volunteering responses, asking appropriate questions, that students follow behavioral expectations, students execute routines and procedures in an orderly and efficient manner, and that students are engaged in the work of the lesson from start to finish. And if they finish early, they have a task to do this that is uninterrupted, that they know what to do if and when they finish early. So in this indicator, you can see the data here. I put the data on the side in bigger so you can see what the color coordinates with. So all students, and then students take some initiative, is blue at 23.1%. That's like a 4+ rating. And then green is 34.7, which is all or almost students completing the tasks, following expectations, executing routines. This is about 57.8% of exactly what we want to see in the classrooms of those 464 that I showed. We have some work to do, obviously, and so that's the strategy when we go back in what professional learning and what coaching and training do we need to do, not only in school-based teams, but in instructional leadership and different things going back to the table. The next indicator that is one of the big four that we're looking for is essential content. This is the content focusing on students' progress toward grade level standards, which we talk about already in our guiding principles and our work that we're doing as far as grade level and engaging in meaningful tasks. Activities that engage students that are aligned with learning goals, right? So not only are we saying, here's the standard, here's the learning target, and here's the material, but what students are actually doing aligns with that. And then instructional materials students use are high quality, appropriately demanding for the grade and course and time we are in the school year. In this indicator, you can see in the blue and green, which is where we want to be sitting. Green is where we want to be. Blue is a little bit of an extended where it's fully aligned and students are engaging a little bit deeper. 59.3% of classrooms that we visited thus far are showing this. Now, just a little background, right? So there's one tool filled out for each classroom visited. There's usually a team of 2 or 4 folks that do that tool together. So usually, always somebody from the school team and from central office team, and sometimes more than 1 or 2 on a team. Discuss what they saw in the classroom in the time, and again, it's a snapshot, right? 10 minutes in the classroom on a certain day, snapshot of the building of what we see at a given point in time. And they know we're coming. It's announced, it's not unannounced, so everybody knows we're coming. And so this is a pretty good percent, but we still have a lot of room to grow. And what we're seeing in this indicator is that now we're getting the materials and we're getting things happening, but we also need to go a lot deeper in what is the activity that's aligned to move students to proficiency. The next big indicator we look for is academic ownership, that students are completing appropriately challenging amount of cognitive work. We talk about this in other terms of like cognitive dissonance, right? Pushing productive struggle. Students provide written or oral evidence to support their thinking. Students use knowledge and evidence to form, articulate, and defend their answers. Students respond and build on peers, their ideas, thinking, and answers. Students routinely provide constructive feedback to classmates if they don't agree in a peer response. And then students consistently try hard to complete academic work, and they persist. So you see here where students are persisting to engage in tasks.
A quick question on slide number 9, where we note 40% of all activities and materials engage students. And again, when you say engage students, you're talking about grade level subject matter, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
Is this the one you're referring to?
Slide number 9.
I don't have
Yeah,
it.
with the pie chart. All students engage in
Right.
content aligned to appropriate standards for their subject and grade. And so, again, I noted that we have it at about 40%. What I wanted to know is, what are some reasons that you're finding that students are not being exposed to their content or grade level content? If it's only 40%, there's a percentage that's not getting it. Why?
So what we're finding is there are certain times they're doing iReady. iReady is prescriptive based on their level at the time. So they may be on their own academic level, which may not be grade level at that time. So if it's an intervention course, sometimes it's what we have in our debriefing meeting is talking about certain things that we saw where it wasn't evident and what the school is going to do about that as far as what do they need to do next. Is it planning? They've led professional learning around this. What do they need to do to help support teachers, right? So there's in different buildings, the teachers are in different places, and every teacher's in a different place just as the students are. And so talking in the debrief with the school team and the principal around what needs do they have from us, from central office to support their work, but also what are they doing to continue to push that we're getting grade level instruction and tasks and artifacts in front of students all day, every day.
Yeah, so one more question, and I see your hand, Commissioner Malloy. So when you say teachers or educators may express there's some needs that they have to help them be able to expose students to this standard, what are some of those needs that are being communicated? What are the needs that they need from central office, for example?
Some of the things that we've heard is planning, time for planning, collaboration. That comes up a little bit later too when you see in in the co-teaching model. You'll see that they've been professionally trained and had training, but time to actually collaborate with the bilingual teacher or the special education teacher to actually plan for that intentional work has been an issue. They have the materials, they have the curriculum. We actually give them that as we go through too, and so that is usually not the question, that they don't have the materials or resources. But it is more about them using it artfully and skillfully within the time frame that they have for that content, where ELA is 120 minutes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do they plan that out?
So planning, collaboration, coaching, and time are needs, and so how are we accommodating those needs or addressing those? And that's my last question for now.
Okay. Well, it comes up a little bit later, but
Okay.
at the end of every walk, we're debriefing for an hour. So we talk about what the school needs are from central office. A lot of that comes up in professional learning. When do we need someone to come out with a third grade team and help lead a planning session or a data session? Things like that come up. They also come up in conversations. The chiefs get all the information and data, and they have follow-up conversations with the principals around what we saw in the community learning walks, and how it aligns to their current commitments in their SIP or SEP, and what they're already working on. Most of the time, the schools are already working on these things, and it's a process of them getting continually better at the work and working through improving each and every staff member as they go through the process.
So if they need more time, you're building in more time.
It's easier said than done in that
Right.
realm, right? We have RTA contracts, we have different things that we have to work through and strategize with. But yes, if there's a need for time and we have money and resources available to pay teachers, yes, but then it becomes a voluntary, right? So that's another piece that we have to work through. We have funding where we can pay teachers to come in and do some work. They don't have to come then unless it's a mandatory. And so some of those issues are bigger than just, if it's an ask, we give it to them and it works. Because then if a teacher can't come at that time, right, they have
Yeah.
a legitimate concern or reason and
Yeah.
they can't come at that time.
Yeah, I
then they lose
understand
that
those
opportunity.
nuances. I just want
Yeah.
to know specifically what's being done to maybe try to mitigate some of those concerns. Commissioner Malloy?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I think so.
So I just want to make sure I'm reading the pie chart, and I'm on the same slide. The pie chart indicates, it seems to indicate that 60% of our classrooms are aligned with grade level content.
Yep, just about.
So these are really reassuring numbers, actually, as I look at this. It looks like only 6% of our classrooms aren't aligned. We'd love to see those improve, but these are very reassuring for me, especially with the number of classrooms that appear to have been visited and the number of schools. Can you maybe just elaborate a little bit more on the difference between the 40% and the 19.2%, and just some of the things that would have indicated that, maybe give some examples of things that would have shown that students were extending their learning?
Yeah, so an example might be that a student connects to a different content, right? And so they're in an ELA course, and like, oh, we did this in social studies yesterday, I understand this, or this is the same graphic organizer we used, and so I know what to do, can I lead my team? And so when you see initiatives and you see students taking initiative in class, that's typically when that 4+ is hit, that 19.2%, where students are owning their learning and connecting it to not only other content and learning, but other things that they've learned in the past and prior knowledge.
Okay, thank you very much. These are reassuring numbers.
Okay. So I think I went through this slide, but shall I recap? The next indicator is academic ownership. This is really in that students doing the cognitive lift. What students are saying, what they're writing, how they're building upon their thinking, their peers' thinking, how they're challenging and giving constructive feedback, and how students are persisting in the work of the lesson. And this indicator the question, the main overarching question is, are all students responsible for doing the thinking in the classroom? As you can see in the answer responses, those are the choices we have as a team as we go through to put an indicator in. So you'll see here there's less percent in the all students plus, right, where they're synthesizing perspectives. That would be the all students plus the 6.5%. All or almost students are doing the thinking in 34.3% of the classrooms. And so this is a real push on cognitive challenge and cognitive lift for students, and us supporting teachers in planning for that, in creating opportunities for tough student discourse, creating good questioning for high order thinking skills, and preparing lessons that are going to continue to push students to do the lift and have a lot less teacher talk and a lot more student talk. And so as you can see in this indicator, we're not as high in the blue and green as the other indicators. And this is also one of the SIP or SEP commitments that most schools have as a thing that they want to lift very heavily this year is student discourse. And so we're working very hard on so what's the next step, right? So what do we need to do to help support that?
So, can I ask a question? So what is being done to help support that?
Some of the teams are going in, right now math is going into a lot of schools in meetings and lifting their protocols for math discourse and what that looks like and giving examples and leading role plays in that. Those things are happening in other content as well. So whatever the school asks for in the debrief as what they think their next lever is, we're trying to produce that as a team in teaching and learning on our side from the directors and content directors side. But a lot of conversation is around, you know, do we need to help our teachers in planning for that, right? As they're planning their normal 90-minute lesson or 60-minute lesson, when do they actually insert questions for students to do the lift and leave time and space and use protocols, right? There's certain strategies you would use to do like a think, pair, share or turn and talk or like that you would do to make sure that students have the opportunity to not only speak, but then be able to write about it. There's a lot of conversation around how this relates to bilingual and multi-language learners, that being oral first is most important, so that giving students opportunity to speak and be able to grapple with content together first gives them more opportunity to write about it later. And so we have a lot of discussions in the debrief about what do schools need in order to help lift that work. And most of it is what they're already doing. Some of the things that we've identified for schools is maybe you pick a couple of these strategies by grade level and really focus in and hone in and get really good at them for a couple months, right? And then you go back and check and see how that's going, and then maybe you try another couple strategies. And so really bringing some ideas and thought process to the table as they're trying to lift the discourse piece. There are a lot of protocols out there and a lot of different templates and handbooks for us as teachers to use with students. Maybe it's easier to bite off a little bit less, or maybe do it by content. What are the best ones for math? What are the best ones in this content? So those are some of the things that we're doing.
So we do have some tools, but you're saying that we're going to be acquiring additional tools to help our students to do the thinking in the classroom. So what are the outcomes? I think you may have said some, but you said a lot of things there. So what would that look like, that a student is doing its own, he or she are doing their own thinking?
It could look like a lot of things, but there are a lot of protocols out there that are strictly addressing, they're teaching protocols, right, and for student learning around how do we lift discourse for students to do the thinking and lift the work. So it could be a group protocol, right, where the group members have roles and responsibilities, and they have report outs, and they all have to do certain pieces and lifts of the work. It may mean that they peer assess and self-assess and give each other feedback, right? And so this goes across different things, but discourse is really, we want kids thinking and talking and doing the work around a big idea, a big problem, the big essential question of the lesson, right? And so that the teacher's not just giving all the information, a lecture, and then the students are trying to repeat or regurgitate that, but that the students are engaging in that process and digging in and learning themselves, and so it becomes more solidified in their thinking because they're doing the work.
And then just the last question here, but is that the kind of culture that the buildings want to embrace? Because it's easier to just, have the buildings to tell them what to think, as opposed to, the students being allowed to evolve into thinking that way. And you mentioned some things around, creative thought and creative thinking and what have you. Oftentimes, it's been in the past where, because we've got state exams and what have you, that, it has not been, valued. In my view, it hasn't been valued in the classroom that, the different kind of thought process and thinking.
Yeah. Well, in the beginning of our process, all the schools present to us what their SEP or SIP commitments are. Almost every school has this as a commitment.
Okay.
And so I believe it's a lift for them that they really want to achieve. We strategize on what we're seeing when we're there in our snapshot, and then also how do we support a central office, and then how to also maybe just strategize with them on how they help themselves where they don't need our support, that they can do that themselves. Some of that helps too when we say, hey, why don't you have your third grade team dig into the protocols from this resource, right, and pick 2 or 3 to practice till February, right, that they can really hone in on, get good at it, be intentional, plan with them, and get really good at doing them, because then they'll start to see the fruits of the labor, and they'll start to see where that discourse really leverages student learning and student thinking and how it transpires into writing.
Thank you.
The next big indicator we look at is demonstration of learning. And this indicator is where students are, it's the questions, tasks, assessments that yield data so the teacher can assess students' progress towards learning goals and identify misconceptions. So some of this is what you might have heard as a formative assessment piece, right? How is the work students are doing giving information to the teacher and the student on how well they're actually progressing through the standards at grade level? Students have opportunities to express learning through writing or explanations with academic language. Students demonstrate how well they understand the content and their progress towards a learning goal. And then students' responses, work, interactions demonstrate that they are on track to achieve learning targets and grade level standards and or IEP goals. Most of these indicators talk about learning targets and or IEP goals. In this indicator, you'll see too in the blue, there's less, 3.5%, where all students plus, they self-assess and provide feedback to and or they self-monitor. This aligns too when we talk about discourse, right? If they're talking about that aligns in the discourse piece. 31.7%, where all students' responses, work, or interaction are demonstrating progress toward learning goals. So again here, we're at a little bit less percentage. We know where we're at here. We know what work we need to do. We strategize on this in the debriefing tool. In the debriefing, we look at the glows of the walk, the noticings, the wonderings, next steps, and anything they need from central office, and what they as a school identify is their next push to get really good at their SEP commitments or SIP commitments.
Give examples of few or no student responses, work or interactions demonstrate program toward learning goals. What does that mean?
Yeah, so this could mean that at the time we were in there, right, students may not have been doing a grade level task, or what they were doing may not have been aligned to the learning target or goal on the board, right? Or that many students were off task, right? And so the responses, or students weren't giving responses, right? The teacher wasn't soliciting responses. Maybe they were even working on a handout, and so the teacher didn't know or wasn't checking for understanding to see, did students know that what they needed to learn and that they were actually progressing, and did the teacher know, right? So very often when students are doing independent work, a teacher would monitor that work, right, as they walk around the classroom and check in with students, or there'd be a way to monitor if students are actually demonstrating learning towards what they're supposed to be doing in that independent work time. In this 15.7%, we couldn't capture that in that 10 minutes.
What does that mean that you couldn't capture it? You couldn't capture that they,
Right, so from what we saw in the classroom, what students were doing,
okay,
you couldn't see that they were progressing towards a learning target. It could have been that they simply were working on a task that wasn't aligned to the learning target. It could have been that the task they were doing, the teacher wasn't really monitoring, so there was no indication from the student or teacher whether they were actually progressing towards a learning target. As we asked a student, what do you need to do to be successful today? We may have got a response like, I don't know, I have to turn this paper in. So those are different things that may have happened. You asked specifically in that few or no, or that there were simply no questions or no kind of check for understanding happening, formative assessments.
and then just another question, the 3.5 all students plus, they self-assess. How do we get our students to that level?
It's a continual growth, right? It's again, coaching and providing feedback to teachers on a regular basis around what we're seeing in classrooms and also what next steps might be to get there, right? Sometimes it's a really easy push for, hey, you were doing this check for understanding with students. Could they self-assess? Could they self or peer assess? And how could you set that up? Usually it's pretty easy to push a next layer there when teachers are doing a lot of formative assessment and they're already checking for understanding. It's just that they haven't thought about some really simple little moves that they can make in order to have students start peer assessing and self-assessing. But that's where we want to be, right? We want students to know, I need to learn this is how I learn it, and this is how I know I learned it. The next big indicator that we really have been looking at is classroom environment reflecting linguistic, culture, diversity of the student population of the class. This includes labels, rules, assignments, classroom library, and posters that are culturally relevant. This is very important to us. You see in the data here, we're almost at even split of a third of the classrooms. Yes, it's clearly evident. A third of the classroom, it's somewhat evident. And a third of the classrooms, it's not evident. And so, just to share a little bit and put some light on this, some of the no's were classrooms like in upper grades and in high school in particular, where we saw a lot of content on the walls, but not necessarily cultural responsiveness, right? And so we were addressing the content that the students were in versus the students that were in the class. We've had a lot of discussion with this indicator as a team and thinking about, what do we need to do better and for teachers. I think all teachers want to do well. They want to address the students in front of them, and they want to make sure they're meeting the students' needs and being culturally responsive. I think some of it is giving examples, exemplars, pictures of what we're seeing that looks good, that's in the green, sharing that with other teachers as we give the professional learning. Other ideas that have been brought to the table is being able to purchase kits and giveaways for teachers, because very often they have to buy these materials themselves, or they are purchasing them themselves. So in the classrooms where we see it's really evident, sometimes those are teachers who've gone out and spent a lot of extra money to do that work. And so we thought about in professional learning, can we buy some kits, create some kits, and actually give them away when they attend the professional learning in this indicator as like a boost. And I think really sharing pictures and exemplars of like, this is what it looks like when it's done great. This is an exemplar, just to help folks so they really understand.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, yes, Vice President LeBron.
Yeah, I love that idea, Shani, and I do have to agree that, and it's also not fair that none of us are expected to pay out of pocket to do our job, except for teachers. So I just have to acknowledge that. So if we could figure out a way to even utilize some of the ARP dollars to even pre-fund some of those kits, even for future folks who may not even be here, and store them, but not at the warehouse, because we're not at the warehouse.
There's no room
but
there.
store them and ID tag them, air tag them, so we know where they're at something. But I yes, let me just say yes, because this is what I do during the day. I literally put play kits together, and I encourage people in the community to like host play and talk about play equity in neighborhoods in the city of Rochester. So yes to giving teachers materials and supplies in classrooms and schools, but also I have to just throw this out there too, because yes, give examples of your perception of what you know are going to classify as like excellence in teaching and so forth. But modeling too, and I have to say modeling because during COVID, when y'all were expecting people to go from I'm here in person every day to I'm here in person, plus now I have to shift to this online platform, and I may not even have all the technology, education, and skills myself. I have to figure it out. But then we also did the hybrid, where we were like, yo, go out there and like teach in person and on Zoom at the same time. Again, with limited resources, very few training, and do it excellent. So I say that because during that time, I also suggested that there's some modeling on how that can be done, because this expectation that we're just gonna, here's what I want to see happen, and then no examples or supports or resources.
Yeah.
It's a huge disadvantage, not just to our staff, but ultimately our students are the one that ends up paying when you have an adult in front of you who does not have all the materials, is not fully supported, and not to their own devices or doing. There are folks, and I do want to acknowledge that there are folks who to their own knowledge can have those things and still need additional supports. So I just want to acknowledge that I'm not talking about those individuals, but there are people who could use the support, who want the support, and would welcome it from central office. And yes, PD, but while you're out there doing those walkthroughs, offer to do some modeling too, if that's part of the PD plan in a different way. So, thank you.
Thank you.
And that is coming up a lot around coaching and modeling, co-teaching models.
President Elliott?
Yeah, this may be a question more for the superintendent with regard to, you know, we tend to hear often that our teachers and others are spending money out of their pocket. It may be an opportunity to begin to research, you know, how much money on the average are teachers spending, and to adjust the budgets accordingly so that our, you know, teachers and others are not having to spend money out of their pocket. So I wanted to just to share that with the superintendent.
Yep, and I would say that schools get their, what they refer to as TAPU money in their operating budgets, and they obviously, even within their own buildings, may provide teachers with a certain amount, and it varies with buildings for instructional supplies. Okay. But with ARP, a lot of buildings did use the American Rescue Plan money to do supplies, materials, you know, learning kits, all of those things. But yes, we could take a look at the overall budget and how they're resourced for instructionals.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the next indicator that has come up a lot for us is around our co-teaching models. And so very specific, I know the numbers there don't equal 100, that was intentional, so I'll just put that out there. I put the indicators out there of the largest piece of the pie. So the largest piece was not applicable. So this question got prompted if we saw more than one adult in the classroom. That could have been a paraprofessional, it could have been a teacher assistant, it may not have been an actual special education co-taught class. And so, and also, we don't expect people to walk around with labels on them, and we don't know necessarily always what kind of classroom it is. Typically we do, because the school team member on the team lets us know. This is a co-taught class, or this is just a para, or whatever. So when we saw 2 adults, it defaults to this co-teaching model to identify 4 main ones. One is one teach, one assist, which you'll see there happened in 11.2% of classrooms. Team teaching, which was 4.3% of classrooms we saw. Station teaching, which is 12.1%. And then there were others, and then this non-applicable. One that we don't see here is the one teach, one observe. And so in co-teaching, we really want to see more of team teaching and station teaching that allows for maximized potential of the adults in the classroom and of students, right? And so this indicator gives us a lot of information around, we have a lot of work to do in co-teaching. not only in professional learning of it, because we've delivered a lot of professional learning and co-teaching, but what are we doing to help folks actually plan intentionally when they have more than one adult in the classroom to address the needs of all the students, right? So the special education teacher is there for a specific student and or students who have an IEP. However, in a traditional co-taught classroom, both teachers should be supporting all students in the classroom at all times. And so a lot of work and conversation happens in debrief about next steps with not only the whole team there, but special ed department and what next steps. Again, it comes to planning time and when do we plan. Some of our schools have collaborative rooms where they have the bilingual teacher, a special education teacher, and 2 gen ed teachers or 1 gen ed teacher in the classroom. Those classrooms do this much better in the station teaching and team teaching, but they also have deliberately built in time for those teachers to plan together and work together on who's doing what at what point in the lesson and how they intentionally plan for those groups and or stations and teams. So a lot of information and next steps for us here. There's always somebody from the special ed department and bilingual department on every walk as there is from MTSS. OSI, OPL, everyone from the content team. And so we're all strategizing, right, after round 1, really strategizing what we can continue to do this year to support, and not just each individual building, but some of these are trends district-wide. And then how do we do this plan for next year on intentional professional learning and job-embedded learning and coaching that needs to happen?
Thank you. I do have a question from Commissioner Malloy as well.
Great, thank you so much. This is actually in regard to the other slide that we were looking at before, just about creating that culturally and linguistically responsive environment. I wanted to just agree with my colleagues and recognizing the burden that sometimes places on teachers to expend that much money on their classrooms. And I know teachers who are spending thousands and thousands of dollars a year to make sure that the environment that they create for their students is really up to par. And that is a burden for a lot of teachers. So anything we can do to help teachers be more successful at that is, I commend that and support it fully. I also was wondering if there is a way that we could incorporate more student voice in that process and make the students part of creating that within each of their classrooms and as a way to connect to some of their teachers. It's just a very good opportunity. I know as a teacher, I've been able to do that in my own classroom where I've had kids create artwork that they think is reflective of their cultural backgrounds and what they're interested in. And I think that you just get so much more engagement in the classroom when students are able to participate in that process. And it helps build relationships with their instructor in the classroom. So I would love to see us, instead of just handing kits to people, allow students to be part of that process.
Thank you for that. And that has been some of our feedback. Some of the green that you're seeing there, that's what we're seeing, right? We're seeing activities where teachers did activities to get to know students, where students have lent a part of themselves to the classroom environment. So you get to see and hear yourself within the environment. So some of the green there, that's when we're seeing that really happen in classrooms and come to light. So that's another avenue, right? As opposed to just providing things for folks and resources and exemplars, but also there are strategies teachers can use to bring this out and to build relationships with students and bring them to life in the classroom.
And then just the last thing that I wanted to say, I love the idea of having those common collaborative times, either for people who co-teach with one another, but even to take it a step further at the high school level at least, or middle school level, allowing that common planning period or time for people of the same grade level who teach the same subject as a way to make things more uniform across the board. It's been very valuable, at least in my district, to have that opportunity. It's hard to schedule, but
it's a process with scheduling, right? And ensuring that the master schedule is how you want it. In schools where they're doing it, they've worked very hard on the master schedule to make that happen, right? So there are schools that are deliberately incorporating that time to do that work, and it has been the work of the master schedule and when to actually create those times and what else to do with children at those times, right? So that they can do the work.
Thanks. Thank you.
So what's next with community learning walks? Right now, we're selecting dates for the second round that they'll actually start in February. We're finishing up round one. We have a few more schools to do. I think we have 1 or 2 left this week and 2 next week, and then a few in January when we come back. We're not going to do them the first week we come back because we don't think it's fair coming back from a break to jump right in. But in that second week in January and through, we're finishing up. We're planning professional learning for the remainder of this year and next year based on district-wide trends. But these small pieces of support that we're talking about in the debrief are happening as we speak. As teaching and learning comes back to the table to do follow-up and assign folks to actually go out and do follow-up, that's the work that's happening on an ongoing cyclical basis. The continuous improvement of data-wise cycles and triangulating data. This is one piece of data. Schools have shared that this data, along with their network walks, along with their state visits, along with their in-house walks and admin, has been very similar. And the look-fors and the walkthrough tool are very similar, and they have been reporting to me, you know, qualitatively that that's been a support, and they found that to be a nice piece. They continue, and we're going to continue to support buildings based on their debriefing, and then directors and executive directors are starting to take over some of the leading of the process. That was part of the process to begin with, to build capacity in the directors and executive directors, and really start moving that. So they're taking over some of the prep meetings now and some of the debriefing, and able to start leading some of this work. So the next piece, that was instruction. Now we're moving into assessment. So I've done curriculum in instruction. Now we're in assessment. This month we're going to talk about high school assessment. This is a quarterly report for high schools for graduation projections and 9th grade on track. Did you put this here for me? Thank you. Sorry. So this first slide, you'll see all the way to the left, the total number in the 2019 cohort. The 2019 cohort are the students that are slated to graduate spring of 2023. So this is credits, Regents accumulation review based on prediction rates of where we are now after the first quarter. So there's 1,773 students. That's 100% of the students. In those first 3 white boxes, you can see the number of students and percent that require support. So that first box where it says requires the greatest level of support, they're at 0 to 5 credits. That's 214 students, 12.1% of that class. The next box over requires intensive support. Students have 5.5 to 10.5 credits. There's 194 students in that category at 10.9%. And then the next box over, the white one, requires support. These are students who have 11 to 15.5 credits, and they require support, not as much support, but they're still not necessarily on track with 16 or more credits. There's 240 students, or 13.5% of that total. The first colored box, the purple box, this is an estimated August graduation rate. This is the number of students and the percent that have 16 credits or more at this time. So 1,125 students, or 63.5%. The difference in this gold box is this box includes students who have passed 3 regents or have 3 credits with CDOS, CTE regents combined. That doesn't mean that all the students in the gold box necessarily have 16 credits. So that's why the numbers don't completely align when you try to do the math in your head. So they have the regents, and they have the 3 regents that we're considering on track, but they may or may not. So the green box includes both. So the green box is your number of students, 1,090, who are on track to graduate with 16 or more credits and are passing 3 exams, including Regent, CDOS, CTE. That's 61.5%.
Okay, so we're going to just stop there for
Yep.
just a moment. If questions, I'll start with you, Commissioner Malloy.
Thank you. So some of these numbers look very reassuring, but then I added up the requirement categories, and it's 36.5% of that group of students require some level of support. So it looks like maybe 36.5% of this cohort are not on track to graduate? Is that what am I reading that correctly?
Yes, so right now, per Regents and credits, the green box, we have 61.5% on track. The yellow and purple just delineate that different.
Right.
So the yellow or goldish color is having both the credits, no,
Right.
I'm sorry, the green is both credits and Regents. The yellow is just having the Regents pass or CDOS or CTE. Purple is having just credits, not necessarily passing 3
Right,
Regents.
I understand that. I'm just very surprised that so many students will require that support or are short. So I'm glad that we're seeing these numbers. It really puts things in perspective.
Right, and so with that, thank you, Commissioner Malloy. And with that said, how are we tracking the students that are in desperate need? Because when you look at performing schools, high-performing school districts, which we will be at some point based on President Elliott's vision, but when you look at these school districts, students are already applying to colleges. You've already had early determinations and all types of things. So what are we doing to track the students that are demonstrated that they're off track and need serious intervention to ensure that we get as many as possible across the line?
I have a slide for that, but I will say that we're doing cohort tracking, not just at 11th and 12th grade now. We're starting that at 9th and 10th grade. We have a process, and we're working with Graduation Ready, and there's a counselor assigned to every freshman, along with an admin at every school now. So there's another slide that refers to this. Chiefs are working very diligently with their principals around what they're doing for each of these students. I will tell you, when I do community learning walks and the data shared in the beginning of the walk, principals have very intentionally looked at each of these students and what they're missing and what they need to do about it. And they are working very diligently to get students what they need and get the right supports in place.
And you're
along
talking
with their chiefs.
specifically about the 2019 cohort, the cohort that is scheduled to graduate this spring in
Yes.
2023.
Yes, and
Okay.
all cohorts.
Okay.
I mean, they're working on all cohorts.
I want to know about this one right here, right now, while we're kind of here. And the other piece is, you probably don't even have this number, because I just had this thought about how many are over age for grade level even, who are repeating grades and
So-
things like
Dr. Caluso has a comment.
So I just want to hop in here a little bit. So the 2019, this is the cohort data. So these are our 2019 kids that are going through this cohort. What you see when you approve resolutions for after-school, tutoring, after-school support, that's where most schools are providing, that, OCR, that marking period recovery, that credit recovery during that time to get those 11 to 15 and a half, through. The 0 to 5 need a different approach than our kids that are 11 to 15, right, and 11 to 15 and a half. And those are the kids that, the students at schools are looking at and seeing, okay, what's the plan for this student to make him through? That's when we also partner potentially with All City. You'll also see these numbers fluctuate on the second quarter, because that's when a lot of the semester courses will end and a lot of the OCR courses end, right? So you'll see a little bit of a bump of those 11 to 15 and a half to those 16 plus moving forward in the second quarter, because that's when a semester will end. And a lot of that OCR will go through a semester of time.
Okay, because the things that are going through my mind are kind of, I love the idea that we're embracing the cohort tracking around the 9th grade and the wraparound services that are going to occur, but how we have senior level students with this level of credit 5 and 6 months before the school years to end, and now we're talking about interventions, which of course we need to make sure we're having, but I think my thought process is, why haven't we been doing this? Why is it 5 or 6 months left? Was there an opportunity to catch this well before now? And I understand that we are under new leadership and transitioning, but we're always under new leadership and transitioning. That's the problem now. But respectfully to you, Superintendent, but What, you know what I'm saying? How do we get this far? I'm tripping over this. Let me just be frank. I'm tripping because I'm like, it's 5 or 6 months left in the school year, and we have some kids with 5 credits. Come on now.
Yeah, so this is the slide that we talk about what are we doing, and the chiefs are here too if they want to jump in and support. But the marking period credit recovery is something that's happening, online credit recovery, virtual academy courses, continuing those data-wise processes, goal setting and action planning, support from All City. Some of the students need support at All City and need to be supported there. Targeted after-school and Saturday programming. There's MTSS problem solving that's happening in all the buildings. There's cohort meetings that are happening. So the work that's happening intensely around the students and the ones who aren't there yet, from what I've seen in the data charts that I've seen, people aren't leaving any stones unturned. We're really working to make sure they move any of these kids who aren't in that 61%, 61.5% now to get there. And obviously, some are going to need some other sort of intervention, right? It's going to be very difficult for a student with 0 to 5 credits to get to 22 credits, right? It would be a Godspeed. So there's a process. There's a lot of hands on deck working on this, from the chiefs to the principals and the school teams, the site-based teams, instructional leadership teams. Everyone's working to get there, but I just wanted to flip to that slide really quick because that was the one that came up later around what are we doing to support students in high school. And this is our seniors and all cohorts, right? And so now we're being a lot more intentional about tracking each and every cohort as they go through, and we're catching students, freshmen, on track, right? And so you'll see a slide in here around that starts us off as a district trying to figure out who's on track right away and make sure we get them on track and keep them on track. You also have another document for 2019 total cohort enrollment in your deck and board docs, not in your deck, but in board docs, that gives you this slide by demographic. So I just want to make sure you have that,
Yes,
and you
we
know
do.
that that's there. It gives a delineation by demographic student group. Next slide. This is the 22 cohort, 2022, so these are our incoming freshmen. This tells us by content, by ELA, math, science, and social studies, and that includes every course within that content that we're offering for freshmen. This gives the pass rate and or not failing the course for each of those content subheads. So as you can see, it kind of across the board, we're hovering a 30, 35. Math is a little bit less. We're at 60.8% passing. Science, 65% passing. Social studies, 72.8. And ELA, 67.6% passing. Those are our freshmen in their current first quarter grades. That's passing with a 65% or above.
President Elliott?
Yeah, so what are we doing in order to remove our students from failing the courses?
It goes back to some of those bullets I just shared a minute ago, but a lot of these courses are year-long courses, so students have a lot of opportunity. This also gives us information right away with this freshman cohort tracking on what students aren't there yet, what do they need to get there, and then what support do we need to ensure happens. One is making sure students know, right? Students, when they come in freshman year, don't always know the impacts of their grades and the credit accumulation they need for graduation. And some is just having a graduation plan, starting when they walk in the door, and making sure they know how many credits they need in order to get where they want to go for their life goals, right? College career readiness. We have a slide like this for each cohort. That's the freshman class.
Yeah, you know, and I would love to see a culture where our students understand what that looks like well before high school. So obviously, they're not required to take Regents exams early, but if they qualify, great. But just something where students know how to track their progress. And I know 19 school, for example, Monique Silas has done a great job of students being able to self-direct and talk about what expectations are. And if we get better across the district at helping our students take ownership, and as you talked about, the collaboration amongst themselves, that the discourse, that'll be awesome.
Yeah.
So if I could just add another thing to Commissioner Simmons' point, with regard to what they're doing in elementary school. We were at school 50. And as you well know, and we talked about, how the elementary schools preparing our students for ninth grade. But, we're going into a school reconfiguration in 2024, 25, or somewhere around there. And so what the hope is that the strategy that we develop for that grade configuration is going to lessen the failure rate that we're seeing in these courses now of our students that are in ninth grade. Right? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the hope is that we're getting things done earlier so students know well before, right? Some districts start talking about this well before 7th or 8th grade, so students know what their path is in high school and how to do a credit accumulation. A lot of cohort tracking does it, through different methods, but this is the 10th grade cohort, so these are our current sophomores and their pass rates. The data's not a ton different, but ELA 64.2% passing, math is 60.8, science is 62.8, social studies 66.4. And this is the 2020 cohort, which is actually our juniors. So you'll see here the pass rate for ELA 64.1, math is 64.7, science 67.2, and social studies 68.2%. And again, all courses within that content. Last one is the 2019 cohort. This gives another different breakdown from what you already saw, but by content. In ELA, 67.4% of our seniors in cohort 2019 that are set to graduate are passing all the courses in ELA, 63.4 for math, 65.6 for science, 72% for social studies. The next chart gives you marking period 1, all courses, a grade distribution chart by cohort. So if you look to the left, that first set of graphs is our senior class, and the next set to the right is junior, then sophomores, then our freshmen. The dark blue is a student getting an A or A+. Orange is those students getting a B or B+. The gray is students getting C or C+. And then a D is yellow. The blue, which is a small percentage, means pass-fail classes. There's only a couple of those in districts. Some are intervention courses or review courses. And then the percent failing any course, all courses, are the numbers there in the dark gray or charcoal color by cohort. So the percent passing marking period 1 in all cohorts is 71.9%.
No failures.
Well, we're at, all cohorts there shows 28.1%.
Yeah, that's too much.
Yeah. Next slide shows School Without Walls. They have a different grading process, and so I wanted to share that with you as well. Just shows in their 2019 cohort on the left, which are their seniors, and then the next set is their juniors, and then sophomores, and then freshmen. The first three are, the blue is on track or exceeding, the orange is on track achieving, the light gray is on track progressing, the yellow is off track approaching, and the dark gray or charcoal color is off track not progressing. So that's specific data addressing that school. The next slide shows the freshmen on track. So this slide shows us by school the percentage of students who are on track earning 5 or more credits with a 65% or higher. So this can show you by school, and then you see the percent in green is the percent of students who are passing 5 classes with a 65% or better. This can be any 5 classes. So it's not just, the regents or the core classes, but this is any 5 classes with getting a 65 or better. So they're attaining 5 credits. And then we come back to this slide on, what are we doing to support? I will say there's several other things schools are doing individually. I summarized this into bullet points when I had several schools respond. I had principals Thursday at a principal meeting and got more input and feedback from them individually at schools. But this is kind of a summary. Most schools are doing many and or all of these things, and then there's always some schools that are doing things a little bit different. And again, chiefs could speak to that a little bit more as they were working intimately with the principals.
So what are the resources that we're providing to Franklin and that we're providing to Monroe and that we're providing to Northeast?
I don't
looks
know
like-
if chiefs want to address that. I am not privy to different resources that they're getting compared to other schools at this time, but maybe somebody else from teaching and learning or chiefs would like to address that.
So I'll start. So from an accountability standpoint and some others, they do have additional funding for resources, right? What we have to make sure is that there's quality in what is being delivered and they have the resources. These schools are also our schools that may be struggling with vacancies, that may be struggling with other areas, right? They have larger gaps that they're also addressing. So I agree there needs to be some more comprehensive approaches and thoughts on some of our buildings that have deemed to be a little bit more difficult. One of the things we've talked about as a group, as a leadership group, is taking this on with our principals, right? Here's the problem of practice. This is what we're seeing. With our principals, help us solve the problem because, collectively we could find an answer that works versus the district trying to solve every problem for them. Like collectively, let's approach this and solve. But these are multifaceted reasons as to why these schools struggle more than others.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear that those conversations are happening because, we also recognize that there's a disproportionate number of students with special needs in certain schools as well as English language learners in certain schools, and sometimes that can those additional resources or strategies are not in place as they should, and so those schools struggle as a result. I know that's not all inclusive, but that is part of it. Dr. Jello, I saw your light come on. Did you have a thought or you're all set? Okay. I'm going to continue here. Oh, well, President Elliott, I think I see your light.
Oh, that was from before.
That's an old light. Okay. So we're all set there. We'll continue.
Did you want to hear from
Yes, I
Chief
do. Oh,
Strickland?
thank you, Chief
Yeah.
Strickland. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. So just speaking specifically to some of the additional supports that we bring to Northeast, Monroe, Franklin, again, thanks to your passing of these resolutions, we have additional programming, night school, where we can actually target students early on, something which we generally just recently started doing after COVID. We have a large emphasis now on our MTSS, which is multi-tiered systems and supports, in which we are looking at students individually in problem-solving meetings, looking at their attendance, looking at their marking period grades, looking at if they have any behavior referrals, suspensions, and really coming up with specific plans to work with these individual students that are falling behind the mark. Again, just to reiterate what Dr. Peluso and others have said, cohort tracking is starting earlier than ever, which is great because we can attack something before it becomes a problem. But like any freshman, the high school experience is a new experience, so we have to definitely target, actually, you have to pass this class in order to get credit. That conversation is a lot different in 9th grade versus what we would normally say in middle school. I think that's all I have.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, go ahead.
To Mario's point, I just want to put out there that the Latino Roundtable, on this week, we were having conversations around what's the nonprofit world's responsibility to these conversations? And I say that because the reality is that there is an expectation that everything can happen in a district in 6 hours and 6 months for kids in an entire year. And I just have to say that because it drives me nuts when we break down the actual time frame that we literally physically have kids in the building. Their entire school day is 6 hours, like from the time they get on the bus. That's not even including that. I'm talking about the 6 hours that they're in a building. We can't do it all. We also, it's really unrealistic for everyone to expect that the district has to be responsible for everything. And I say that to say that graduation requirements and understanding how to get a kid to the finish line should not be only an RCSD responsibility or conversation. And so having conversations around developing workshops in Spanish, because we are the Latino Roundtable, but also in multiple languages, and challenging our English nonprofit sectors who provide supports for everyone else in Rochester to, develop that. But we were having conversations about doing that in partnership with the district so that we're also not misinforming parents, right? And that we're educating them on what the state requirements are. This is what it looks like. These are things you should be asking your child's parent. So parent-teacher preparation conversations. And just from my own personal experience, I never went into a parent-teacher conversation a conference conversation, asking my teacher where my kids were at. Where are they academically this year, but where are they? Are they on track? What classes are they taking? What do they have to do next? And what do I need to do, right, as a mom of a teenager, because it gets more difficult as they get older, to support that teen? I don't know those things, right? And I feel like even now, even though I'm on the board, I'm literally learning that right now with this child, with this last child in this, my own child. I have my grandchildren coming. They're in right after her. But what does that look like? And so I think I say that publicly, but I hope that the goal for us is that we develop some workshops and do them on an ongoing basis. So it's not a one and done, but maybe quarterly we have these big workshops. We put them out in different quadrants of the district. We host them at Ibero. We have them in Spanish. We have them in Arabic. We have them in Somali. And we train people to help us do these workshops, because the reality is, again, in those 6 hours, there's only so much we can do, and there's only so much that you can do in a parent-teacher conference. You really have like 10, 15 minutes, as our parents do show up to parent-teacher conferences. I know it drives me nuts when anyways. But that's what you get. You get a very short amount of time because there are other parents with their kids also competing for that time with their teacher, who also has a limited time to see all the parents, do all this thing, and then get back home to their families. So I say that to share with you all because I hope that you all will work with us on that and that we can pull in some other nonprofits to do some community ongoing education on what it takes to graduate a kid. It's not just our responsibility, it's all of our responsibility, and we can do this collectively. Thank you. Let me get on my soapbox.
Thank you. So the next piece is professional learning. So we did curriculum instruction assessment. Now we're on to professional learning. Just a prompting that you will see a resolution soon for Skillful Teacher course. This course is really good, effective instructional practices that we're going to help build the capacity and competency of our directors and their teachers on assignment in central office to help support what we're looking for in instruction and help support how we lift and coach throughout the district on good instructional practices. So that will be coming soon. Also, another for American Middle Level, we've talked about this a few times. We have sent some folks to training in the fall. This is for administrators, district, and central office to go to training to start really planning the effective middle school structures that we want to incorporate in 24-25. So that will be coming. The other piece is that we have liaisons for math, science, ELA, and MTSS, multi-tiered systems of support, who meet monthly. They come from each building to meet with our staff central office, and they take things back to turnkey to really implement our district initiatives and all the strategies that we want to see. And so that has been going very well. We really want to focus and streamline that next year, so we don't have 4 different people coming out every month, that we can streamline that work. But in addition to that, every month, every content is mandated to deliver 2 professional learning opportunities every month. So that's just an update on professional learning. Next, we have School of Choice. And this has been interdepartmental collaboration, trying to improve process for this year for our students coming in 23, 24. And a lot of work has gone in, not only from placement, IM&T, communications, and working collectively with chiefs and school leaders, trying to make sure we do this process well, and it's streamlined a little bit with timelines, right? We weren't always in the same timeline at every school, and the application process wasn't always in the same timeline, so now it is. So just some highlights. Kickoff was December 5th, 100% was the media campaign that every student in 8th grade complete a high school of choice application. We do have a tracking process for that, and in January, chiefs and school leaders will start to get a list of which students have and which students have not. And counselors are working very diligently with families to get that done. The application deadline is February 17th. Lotteries are going to run March. Notification to schools, scholars, and families should be early May. The goal, again, is all 100% of 6th and 8th grade students to complete the process. I just want to give some highlights, too, and shout out to communications. The digital magazine came out for every high school. It's beautiful, and we saw some beautiful bulletin board signage today that's going to be coming out, 20 throughout the city, 2 electric, some on buses, some on billboards, so that campaign is coming. We're also really trying to get out into either schools and or community centers to do some support with translation for families to complete the process if they haven't yet done so and they need additional support. There's additional programs at schools and surrounding around specific pathways where we're doing additional, each school is doing their own open houses and different things to attract and or get every student that they can that wants to attend the programs that they offer, pathways that they offer. Just trying to make sure I got all my notes.
Shani,
Yes,
I just want to.
yep, go ahead.
I have 2 folks. I do have Commissioner Malloy who's trying to get my attention. Then we'll go to you, Vice President LeBron, and then respectfully, and then we'll have Commissioner Powell after that.
Okay.
Thank you. Back on slide 27, regarding the skillful teacher course.
Yes.
Just a question regarding that. Is this our own course that we're developing, or is it based on the skillful teacher book that came out? It's in the
It's
6th or
from
7th
Research
edition.
for Better Teaching. They're actually going to send a consultant out to teach the course. It's 6 full days of training for our folks to take. And it runs kind of like a college course, but it is using the skillful teacher book.
Right, so it
and-
was based
yeah,
on that.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Just so for those who are listening, because I just have to say, we use these jargon and lingos and we make stuff up. But school of choice lottery time or school of choice lottery is a very convoluted, in my opinion, way to say, parents, this is when you apply for 7th and 8th grade or 9th through 12th. Like, I just have to say that because I know we say it all the time, we talk about it, but that's why this is critically important. That's why we're talking about it. But what has happened in the past is a lot of our families, just by the title, don't even understand, what is this? What is this application? You're already in school. And then they don't apply. And we end up having to place kids oftentimes in schools that they don't want to go. And then, we end up with families and students. But then the process itself we have a lot of work to do. So I'm so happy to hear that you guys are doing outreach, engagement. I've experienced it this year. My daughter's counselor is like, everybody's application has to be back. And I did mine online, so I was like, I will print the confirmation, but I'm not refilling out this paperwork because my daughter is harassing me for it. So shout out to all of the counselors and staff who have taken this additional responsibility on. It is the first time ever I've ever seen it happen in the district. Wow. And I just want parents to know how important it is that you have a say in where your kid goes. Although I do not like the process. And I will just say that now. I don't think anybody is like blind to the fact that I'm not a fan of what happens afterwards. But it is still important to engage in it to ensure that you get the best choices that you can have for you and your child for 7th and 8th grade if they're they're transitioning out of 6th and in high school. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So kickoff December 5th has got to be the earliest I've ever heard. I remember years where we couldn't get the booklets, the zone booklets out but, before Thanksgiving. So this is really awesome. What I want to know is, how does this compare to the enrollment periods for charter schools? Are we, and parochial schools too, for that matter, are we competitive with them, or are they still opening up their doors or their lotteries before us?
Can I defer, Dr. Black, do you have the answer to that? Because we did talk about it, and I don't have the date solid in my head. Can I defer that question?
Sure.
Or we can put it on the question log if you don't
I
have
was
it
getting ready to
particular
say,
head.
before we communicate key dates, we will add that to the question log.
Yeah, I know it came up in discussion, though. We were looking at other dates, and so we will put that in the question log, and we'll get back to you.
Now, this is for 6th and 8th grades. When's the elementary school kickoff, and when are the elementary charter schools starting to take names?
Dr. Paluso is going to take that
So
question.
K is included in this. This is K, 7, 8, it's transition from K, out of 6th, and out of 8th to 9th.
And again, just before I close, I would say this collaboration amongst and across departments was not easy. It has been intense, but we're pulling together, and we want to build it even stronger for next year, and that's the plan to do per academic plan, to even make a more robust, more student family-centered process to give to you by March for next year's process. So thank you for that. And we already answered a lot of questions, so I'm thinking we probably don't have any more questions.
Well, just one comment from me.
Yeah.
Just that, I heard you say that it was tense. And I just want to say that it probably is going to continue to be tense until we get it right.
Yeah.
And I'm appreciative of the great work that's being done. And that I would just say to, the buildings and to the central office, we've got to embrace the tenseness right now until we get it right, because it is a heavy lift. And anytime you're lifting something that's as heavy as what we've got to do here in the district, there's going to be some tension. But I'm hoping it's going to be good tension, because we're going to get on the other side of this and making sure that our children are prepared for a global economy. So don't resist it. It's a part of what we're trying to do here in the district.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I
Very
appreciate
excited
that.
to hear about some of the things that are going to be proactive approaches versus us continuously reacting. The 9th grade tracking, getting the culture into the schools, how we're looking at the placement of students and timeline or what have you. I also would like, did you have any last remarks that you want to make? And were there any other comments from commissioners or leadership here on the dais? Okay.
I would just say, sorry, I talk about, there's going to be this tension, this tenseness. Loving each other is going to go a long ways in this, so we got to get it right.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts that you'd like to share?
No, I thank you for your time tonight.
Okay.
and-
Well, we thank you for your time and patience with us as we find our balance and what equity and student achievement will be, how we will highlight information as we move forward. We'll find that pulse and make sure that families listening in as well as board members have an understanding of where we're going, the direction we're looking to get to, because I know the conversation is really about making sure data is used robustly but without losing the human element. And there's a lot of work, and like you touched on, that cross-collaboration. I don't take that for granted, that there's a lot of work to be done. So appreciate that. I also want to bring to the attention to everyone that we have a 2019 total cohort enrollment graduation review, which is a separate handout, so that is available on board docs that you can take a look. And again, it disaggregates the data around our cohort enrollment and progress in particular areas. Thank you, Shani.
Thank you.
And let me just go back to the agenda. I believe this actually concludes the Equity and Student Achievement Committee for this evening. Whew, Yeah. And we do have a board survey that we can go ahead and take before we adjourn into our next session. So I'm going to turn the mic over to you, President Elliott.
Thank you. So are we doing the, right, no, we're doing the survey now, right?
Yes.
Okay, I don't seem to have the survey, but I may be not clicking on something.
Right, I don't see it coming up actually
I
either.
see it on the back end.
Oh,
Hold
here
on.
it is. Just, it's under, on the side, under executive content over to your right, you'll see a purple.
You'll need to be signed in order to see the survey.
Oh,
Try signing back in.
well, that would help, wouldn't it? Thank you. Oh, man, come on. Mine is restarting again. I don't know what I clicked.
While we're taking the survey, I'm going to take this opportunity to actually officially close this meeting. I'd like to entertain a motion to close out the Equity and Student Achievement Committee meeting for this evening.
Motion.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Good evening. This is a special meeting. The date is December 13th. And I would like to call the special meeting to order.
Motion.
Well, I wasn't really looking for that. I was just calling it, yeah. Yeah, I was looking to see, just,
Jump for the count.
no, waiting to just go into the next item. So we have no speakers for this meeting, and so I'm wondering if you all will be okay if we bundle these resolutions, or are there some resolutions that we need to maybe set aside for any purpose, or any, I do have a question on one resolution, but other than that, and I think that there may be a correction on one of the resolutions, but other than that, is that okay with everybody that we bundle? Yep.
Might go faster, we just do one at a time. Call for questions, because we don't know what the questions are until.
Yeah. All right, so have you not? Okay, all right, so we're gonna bundle.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, is there a motion for resolution 280 through resolution, let me just do this. Resolution 280, 281, up through 294. Because there are a couple of motions here that looks like there's an amendment and there's a bond request as amended. Those are different resolutions. So we'll vote on those later. So a motion for resolutions 280 through 294.
Motion.
Motion by Commissioner Malloy. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Vice President
President
McBride.
Elliott. Good evening.
Yes.
Commissioners. We have an amendment for Resolution 292. Unfortunately, there's a typographical error. It's an indirect service to 650 students. There's an additional 0.
So not 6,500?
No, it's 650.
Okay, so we need to do we set aside the, I'm looking at to the general counsel, do we set aside the motion for the amendment? How do we?
I think Commissioners Powell's recommendation to just go through them one by one at this point makes more sense because now we would have to withdraw that you would have to withdraw that motion and redo it to motion 280 through 291, and then so you could do that.
Yeah.
And then deal with the rest of them individually.
All right, so would you withdraw the motion and let's do it?
I'll withdraw, second, go ahead.
Yeah, whoever.
Yeah,
said
so
it.
motion for resolution 280 through 291. Am I correct on that? All right, so Commissioner Malloy?
Motion.
Yep,
Second.
all right. Any questions or comments relating to resolutions 280 through 291? And I think I did have a question with regard to 280. No, that's the wrong one.
I have a question.
See, that's
Yeah,
why you
294. So Commissioner Malloy?
I have a question just about 282 regarding just one of the positions. What is entailed in the recruiting position? Or what
Good evening,
capacity do they
Commissioner.
serve?
So these were positions that we added in June. And these are positions to ensure that we're out and about in our community, recruiting at events, local, regionally, across the state, and helping to build our talent ambassadors, our recruitment ambassadors from amongst our staff and community to ensure that we are recruiting near and far. We have not had recruiters until recently, and in an organization our size, we must have them. And so we had a vacancy. We had 3 of these positions. We had a vacancy, and so this is our effort to fill the 3rd and final.
So this is from a vacancy. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions or comments on resolutions 282 through 291? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, is there a motion for resolution 292?
So moved.
Second? Second. Moved by Commissioner Malloy, seconded by Commissioner Adams. Any questions or comments relating to resolution 292? Hearing none, all those,
This is the
This is
resolution.
the amendment.
Resolution that requires an amendment.
oh, I'm sorry.
Yep. So there would be a motion to amend, just to indicate that it's indirect services to 650 students as opposed to 6,500.
Okay,
So
so is,
motion.
motion by Vice President LeBron,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Malloy. Any questions or comments relating to the amendment to resolution 292? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so,
Now we need to vote on
Yeah,
it?
no, we need to vote on that.
The motion, exactly, the resolution as amended.
Yep.
Motion now voted on, yep.
that's right. So is there a motion for resolution 292 as amended?
So moved.
Yeah,
I thought we moved that, I thought the way in which it goes is that that was not, that motion was
Withdrawn.
withdrawn, and we did the amendment.
You have,
motioned it without the amendment, and then we motioned within the motion for the amendment, and we voted on the amendment, and now we have to vote on the motion.
All right, so, as Vice President LeBron said. Motion for resolution 292 is
We
amended.
have it then.
Got it?
Okay,
All right.
all in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Is there a motion for resolution 293? And I'm going to put 294 together, although I have a question for 294.
So moved.
Second.
Second, moved by Commissioner Malloy, seconded by Vice President LeBron. Any questions or comments relating to resolutions 293 and 294? Yeah. So my question with regard to resolution 294, do we need to rescind resolution 246 in order to approve? What do we need to do? What happens to resolution 246 if we are looking to approve this resolution 294?
I will let, Chief Smith talk about it further, but within the resolution, it does say that resolve that resolution 246 is hereby rescinded.
Oh,
So if this resolution
No question.
is rescinding it.
okay. All right. My bad. I don't have a question. Commissioner Vice, okay, all right, we're good. Yep, we're good. Thank you. So all those in favor of resolutions 293 and 294?
Aye.
Any opposed? Is there a motion to amend resolution 247?
So moved.
Any questions or comments relating to resolution 247? What
I'll
was
second.
247?
Can we get a
I'm gonna
second?
second. I'll second it.
Did I miss that?
Yeah.
Yeah, what, because I was looking at what is,
content here.
yeah, right,
Where's
that's
the
what I was,
content?
what's the content?
The change is, there was an incorrect year, and so the dates were what was changed.
Yeah, but doesn't that need to be listed? There's nothing in board docs.
Oh, there
other
looks like
than-
there's a queue here. Oh, that's a bond request. I'm sorry.
So, if I can interject for a moment, there's a motion to amend the resolution, and then the resolution is underneath that as amended?
Oh, okay, so
Okay.
it's the bond underneath as amended.
Correct.
All right. All right, any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And we did do a motion, did we, and a second, correct? All right.
that was just the motion to amend, right?
No, it's already amended. No, they presented it amended.
So P and Q are together.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So they presented an amended resolution, presented as a board resolution 247, already presented as an amendment.
All right.
Just letting our parliamentarian know because he's double checking. That's what.
Okay, and before we close this meeting, I'm going to turn it over to Rahima Wynn to talk about the public hearing that we're going to have on December 15th.
Yes, on Thursday, December 15th, here at Central Office in room 3A3B, we will have the State Monitor public hearing. We'll review the updated plans as previously presented in our finance meeting in October and our ESA meeting in November. Members of the public who wish to speak will have until 12 p.m. the day of to sign up. They may do so by emailing State Monitor Hearings at rcsdk12.org, or they may contact the board office. Additionally, there's information listed on the district's website that contains the, both plans as well as additional information on how to sign up to speak. And that's right on our district website at www.rcsdk12.org.
Thank you, Rahima. And I'm going to ask for a motion to convene into executive session to discuss matters leading to the appointment or employment of a particular person, to discuss collective bargaining negotiations, to discuss matters made confidential pursuant to federal or state law, and to receive the advice of the general counsel as permitted by Section 105 of the Open Meetings Law. And this meeting is closed to the public. Is there, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Malloy, seconded by?
Commissioner Adams. Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Adams. Any questions, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all right, thank you. And good night, everybody. We're going to convene downstairs. Have a good evening.